Do you feel the weight of leading a church where people currently love what you do, love maybe even you? At the same time, you feel the pressure of what the church needs to become. I mean, think about it, right? That's the issue with change a lot. Like, the people at your church love what's at your church. At the same time, you know that things need to change in your church. And that may cause some people not to love it as much. That's a real pressure. If you've been in ministry for more than a week, you already know that, right? I mean, church leadership is not for the faint of heart. It requires vision and compassion and strategy and courage and I don't know, like about a dozen, decisions a day that affect both people and affect the mission. So you may have thought about this already, but just in case, right? People participate in your church by choice. They come because they like what your church already is, which means the moment that you consider changing anything, service flow, worship culture, style, a staff role, a volunteer roles, a ministry strategy, or even just like the seating configuration, I mean, you feel the tension in the church rising. And the reason is that because people who love the church as it is aren't usually asking for the changes the mission requires next. This is, by far, one of those pastoral leadership dilemmas, and no one really prepared you for this. They didn't teach you about this in seminary or Bible school. The changes your church needs tomorrow are often the ones your people do not want today. Let me say that again. I love this phrase. The changes your church needs tomorrow are often the ones your people do not want today. So, what do most pastors do? I'll tell you what we do, because I was a lead pastor for 13 years. We hesitate, we delay, we hope clarity will magically arrive, right? We pray the problem will resolve itself, and we lead week to week, putting out fires instead of planning and moving forward. And listen, like I said, I get it. I have lived this out. But nothing feels heavier than making a decision that might unsettle the very people you've been called to shepherd. And I know you're not thinking it this way, but they're also the ones who are giving and volunteering. If you disrupt the apple cart too much, there won't be an apple cart anymore. So here's the uncomfortable truth, though. And I do say this with a lot of empathy, but also with a lot of experience. Not deciding is still deciding. When a decision needs to be made, whether it's to change a staff member or change an environment, or whatever it is, not deciding is a decision. That's still deciding. Repeating last week's service without asking why or what can make it better, that's deciding. Leaving someone in a role that really is no longer a good fit, that's a decision. Like waiting for it to play out, that's a decision. Avoiding, a hard conversation because it feels risky, that's a decision. Like putting it off, that's a decision, right? Doing nothing just maintains what currently is. And when what exists is no longer serving the mission, well, now we're in trouble. But you made a decision to allow that to happen. Now, listen, I'm not saying that, leaders should just rush into decisions or bulldoze people. Not at all, okay? I've done that before accidentally, and I learned the lesson the hard way. But I've also delayed decisions before, and that's just as hard of a lesson to learn, right? Pastoral leadership, it really does require wisdom and patience and relational awareness, but healthy churches don't move forward by accident, and you know that. They move forward through intentional leadership. The kind of leadership that evaluates honestly, that plans strategically, and that acts purposefully, even when the decisions are difficult. So let me just ask you a question. It's kind of clarifying, maybe a little painful. Here it is. What is the decision that you have been postponing? Like, what is the one decision, as you think right now, what is the one decision that you have been postponing? And you know it needs to happen. You know something needs to happen. Something's got to give. But you've been procrastinating. You've been delaying. You've just been hoping, that it'll work out. What is that one decision you've been postponing? I bet you already know what it is. Every pastor knows what it is. And maybe there's more than one. Maybe you're realizing that your service structure is out of alignment with the culture that you're trying to build. Maybe a ministry that once worked beautifully is now restricting the mission. Maybe there's that staff member or a volunteer that needs to be reassigned, or, and this is hard, maybe even released. And you have been just delaying and dreading that conversation. In fact, you've even rationalized and you've convinced yourself that you can't fire a volunteer, and you absolutely can, and you probably should if you're questioning it. Maybe your preaching process needs to become a lot more intentional because you are constantly working from behind. Maybe the decisions around your facility, your leadership pipeline, your discipleship model. Something that used to serve the mission, right? And now it's just standing in the way. It's just an obstacle. You know what it is. And there is good news, right? You don't have to solve the whole thing right now. What you do need to do is make a decision to take a step forward. And it can be an incremental step forward. In fact, that's what great intentional leaders do. They create clarity by moving towards the decision, not away from it. Again, you don't have to solve the whole thing right now, but even just moving towards it, deciding that you are going to address it, deciding that you're going to do the first thing that addresses it. That's a decision, and it's a positive, smart, intelligent, right, good leader, intentional decision. So that could just mean something as simple as scheduling a conversation. Maybe it just means getting some feedback that you've been not wanting to get. Maybe you need to map out that new structure. You don't have to implement it yet, but just map it out. Maybe you do need to reassign somebody or change a responsibility, right? Whatever that thing is, just take that one step. Decide to take that one step. Because when you take even one incremental step, the next incremental step becomes clearer and it becomes a little easier. And when clarity grows, you know this, pressure decreases, not just for you, but for the entire church, staff, volunteers, attenders. Let me give you a quick example, just from my own leadership. When I first came to Woodstock City Church, it was called Watermark Church back then, I inherited everything the previous leader did. And I inherited everything the previous leader did not do. And there were several important decisions, right, that the previous pastor just didn't make. And really, with the right heart, he didn't make it because he didn't want me, the next guy, to inherit more decisions that I might want to do differently. And I can appreciate that in theory, but in reality, all of those undecided decisions were festering and getting more and more difficult by the day. Remember, not making a decision is making a decision. So what happened is I inherited not just a plethora of problems, I inherited a lot of decisions that had been festering and needed to be decided weeks, months, and in some cases even a year ago. And so I had to act kind of quickly. It would have been very easy, though, right, to just delay all that, to postpone it, to hope that clarity would just arrive. But I knew that, and you know, right, that isn't going to happen. That none of that was going to kind of change the reality of what needed to happen. And so here's what I learned in my first week as a lead pastor, that intentional leadership really allows the mission to drive the decisions. That's what intentional leaders do. We look at the mission, and then in light of the mission, we make the decisions. And so think about it. If you have a hard decision to make and you postpone it, is that mission thinking? It's definitely not, right? If you're not making a decision, or you're making a decision to not make a decision, is that hurting the mission or is it helping the mission? I would argue in virtually every case, it is hurting the mission. It's harming progress. It's basically like choosing mission or not choosing the mission. You're just choosing maintenance. You're almost like choosing comfort over courage, or you're accepting pressure when you could have clarity. That's definitely not what great leaders do. Intentional leaders, they don't allow the mission to suffer due to a lack of decisions. So let's just kind of wrap this up. Let me bring it home for us, okay? As you think about this, what is one intentional step that you can take this week towards the decision that you've been postponing? Like, what's the one step? And listen, not the whole change, as I said, right? You don't have to finish the implementation, but what's the first incremental step that you can take? Like decide to have the conversation, decide to have the evaluation, decide to move towards alignment, or just decide that you're going to build a better plan. Whatever it may be, just make the decision and take the first step towards it. And this is so helpful because intentional leaders, they just don't wait for clarity. As I said, they create it. And when you lead with intention, your church, man, gains direction, your team gains confidence. And some of that pressure that you've been carrying, well, it really does become quite manageable again. Hey, if this conversation was helpful in any way, if it sparked an idea or a thought, I'd love to invite you to take a next step with me. And it isn't because you need more work to do, right? And I don't want to give you more work. I want to actually help relieve the pressure by helping you think more intentionally about your mission. So it could be as simple as joining one of my free ministry strategy sessions. You could join a leadership lab. Those are very cheap courses that I have live that you can join me live for. And then you and I will have a one-on-one conversation during it as well. Or if you want to really go deep into some of these things, I have a limited number of strategic leadership partnerships that I offer. These are one-on-one coaching relationships where I spend time with you digitally and in person. I should come to your church, preach if you want me to. You don't have to have me do that though. Spend time with your elder board if that's helpful, with your executive team, or just with you working on the big pressures that you're feeling and adding more intention to your mission. However you figure it out, with or without me, here's what I'm praying. I'm praying that you'll just be more intentional about these decisions. You know, wherever wherever you happen to be leading, you don't have to do it alone. Find people to come alongside you, to speak life into you, to help you think about the decision. But no, in the end, you are, because you're the leader, you are responsible for the decision.